So this video is called Queer in Quarantine, and I'm mostly just going to be talking about my own personal experiences in lockdown, and I'll just touch just a little bit on what other people within the LGBTQ plus community might be going through as well. You know, it's been kind of an odd thing for me. It's been odd mostly in the fact that my life hasn't changed that much. You know, I know that so many people have been struggling. Even after a few days, there were some people who were really struggling with it, and I completely understand that. You know, if your way of life, the way that you've been living is changed, you know, so dramatically overnight, I can imagine that must be a serious shock. But for me, that's not really what it was like. I mean, I found that the interesting thing for me is that I was probably, in a lot of ways, quite isolated before this happened. I know people have talked about self-isolation. And so before lockdown kicked in, there were a lot of things that has been, you know, that people haven't been able to do since we've had lockdown that I wasn't really doing before. Often things that I really would have liked to have done, but just because of what my situation has been, I wasn't really doing already. So I'll admit that this was very much self-inflicted, but essentially what happened was around 2 years ago, I made the decision to leave my job. I wanted to set up as a coach. I wanted to do my own thing. And then over the last 2 years, you know, I've learned so much, but I also realised recently that I want to go in a slightly different direction to the direction I probably was going in. And I've realised that something that I really want to do is to create content because I want to really be able to connect with people. Anyway, that's probably a different story, but essentially because of the choices that I made, that I wanted to be completely authentic, I wanted to be completely true to myself. And I felt that working the way that I was working and the job that I was in just wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I took a massive chance and I left my job and I decided to start my own thing. You know, I've been quite a way away from my friends. My friends are scattered all over, really, but I mean, I do have a few friends still in London. So my friends would mostly be there. And so because I had run out of savings, it wasn't really possible for me to visit frequently or anything like that. So, you know, I hadn't been going out to bars, I hadn't been going to meetups, I hadn't been going to like LGBT meetups, which is something I was doing when I was in London, living in Essex. So that's something that I was doing before that, like 2 years ago, that I haven't done for a long, long time, you know, probably haven't done for like a year and a half. So, you know, I wasn't interacting and, you know, going to charities and the LGBTQ things that I really like to do and that I think a lot of people within the community like to be a part of. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, things haven't really changed that much for me, but there have been some changes, and I did feel like I reached a point where I wasn't really sure what I was doing. And that's when I made the decision to start creating content, because it's something that I wasn't doing, because I thought, well, no one was seeing the content, so I kind of felt like, okay, well, that's something that I'm going to have to wait to do until later. And then I realised, okay, look, do you know what? I don't know what I'm doing right now, and I know, if I'm really honest with myself, that what I really want to be doing is creating content, putting things out there, and just really connecting with people. So I really, you know, I went through about a week where I had no idea what I was doing. This is before I made the decision. And I just thought, you know, I don't know what direction my life is going in. And I really, really struggled. You know, I was struggling to get out of bed that week. But then once I came to a decision, I just really tried to throw all of myself into it. And it's really shown me how it can really change your mindset and your mental state by just really throwing yourself into something, just putting everything that you have into it and putting all of your time into something. You know, I don't believe that it's all about action. I think that you have to be in the right place. I think that you have to be in the right emotional place for things to work and to really get a lot from something. But I also think that when it's action coming from a place of something that you really care about, something that feels right and that feels good and feels really fulfilling, I think that it can be a really rewarding thing. And I think that especially during lockdown, you know, while most of us are limited in terms of what we're doing, I think it's really, really important for us to try to find something that we can do at home that we can just throw ourselves into. what I feel like I've learned from that 1 week, it might have been a bit more than a week, where I was really struggling to get out of bed and get it together, and I was struggling to find motivation. And I think there were two things really going on. So one of them was that for me, I kind of call it falling off the horse. I was doing well. I'm usually pretty good with positive thinking, positive thoughts, but I think sometimes once we engage with one or two negative thoughts and it starts to roll, it's very easy to keep engaging and to keep going down that path where we really don't want to go. And I think that was one of the things that happened, and I think that's something that can happen to everyone, really. But I think something else was just losing focus and not being sure of my direction. And I bring this up because I think that with everything that's happening right now, where it's, with this situation where it's so much harder to maybe communicate with people in the same way that we usually would, and we're not meeting up with people, in the same way that we might otherwise. I think it's really important to, decide on a direction, have a focus. One of the things I really love about the queer community is there's just so much creativity there. There's so much creativity, so much self-expression, but there were a lot of challenges as well. And I think, I've been incredibly fortunate during this time, but I know that there are a lot of people who are struggling right now, because they're in really difficult living situations. They might be staying with people who don't accept their gender or their sexuality. And, I think it's also really difficult when you're used to having that support mechanism there. I mean, I definitely noticed it when I left Essex and London. I found it really difficult. And of course, I've had to get used to being in this situation temporarily. I mean, it's sort of temporarily the past 2 years, but year and a half, really. Although it's, mostly a year and a half. But I know what it's like to lose that, to not have that support mechanism where you're going, you're part of, the LGBTQ plus charities and meetups, and, you're just really part of the community. And, it's difficult not to be as involved, I think. And so I know that there are a lot of people within the queer community who are going to be struggling a lot at the moment. Despite the fact that I know this is a really challenging time for so many people, and, for everyone, really, I still feel like we have an opportunity in this time to really, to really get into something, to really dig deep and to find things that are really meaningful to us, that we can do at home, that we can work on, and that we can work on from home. I think that we do have a chance to, expand our creativity and our self-expression. That is something that we can do in lockdown, until things do go back to normal, or start to go back to normal a little bit more than they are right now. And I just feel really strongly that we have a chance to sort of create a deeper connection with ourselves in this time, and to just decide, to figure out what it is that really matters to us and what's really important. I think it's really important not to take things for granted. And I think it's, during this time, like, you definitely realise how lucky we are to actually have the internet, because it's something that's really allowed us to stay really fully connected with people. And I mean, for me, I've actually spoken to people more since going into lockdown than I was before, because I wasn't really seeing many people. I feel like I've actually had more interaction and more connection in a lot of ways. So I think we are really lucky for that. And I definitely noticed that there were ways in which, I could have maybe been interacting more and making more effort to be a part of things. And I think we have to remember that there are opportunities there to connect within the queer community, and that I think the community is doing a lot to try to bring everybody together and to try to create like online meetings and meetups and things that we can do. So I think it's still really possible for us to all be a part of that. I really do feel that, we're at home, and I think we have a chance right now to really think about, who we are and what it is that we want from our lives. And I do think that it's a really good opportunity for us to, be creative and express ourselves in different ways. And I think that we need to take this time for that. If anyone wants to chat about anything, I'd love to hear like your stories of what it's been like for you being in lockdown and being in quarantine, because I know that we're all having like such different experiences, and I'd really love for us to be able to share those.